Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be painting up the Biophagus. Now unfortunately, sorry, I forgot to actually get the colors to show what I used because I put them away before I could take the pictures of them. I just got a little rusty with that. But anyway, the model is fully assembled up to the point where we get in the way of painting. So the little acolyte thingy he has by his side is completely built. His arm and weapon is separate, his backpack is separate, and apart from that, the rest of him is completely 100% built. And of course he is primed using a car primer, black matte, because it can be used in any air or humidity, whatever conditions. Now let's start with the largest part of his body, which is his lab coat. So with Dark Reaper, Administrative Gray, and Pro Bold Titanium White, which is just basically a white paint that actually works. Now I'm trying to flex a little bit since it's a character model, so basically we're actually going to start off by layering his whole coat with Administrative Gray. And then once that's done, I'm going to take Dark Reaper and we're going to, with a fine brush, paint in the lines of all the deep recesses and stuff. It's okay if we bleed a little bit over or stuff, or overfill, that'll be fine. And then once that's done, we're going to take Dark Reaper and apply it to a bunch of water and turn it into a wash. And we'll apply around 2-ish coats of that all over. And once that is done, I will re-highlight all the edges and upper areas with Administrative Gray. Now, I wanted to add texture to the coat, so basically I painted a bunch of vertical lines all throughout it. And once I finished with that, I then went and started mixing in some bold titanium white into it, and I re-highlighted everything again, focusing on the more raised areas and stuff, and the edges and more pronounced areas. And I continued this process until eventually I got to pure white, where I highlighted the most raised edges, folds and stuff, and occasionally some vertical lines throughout. And then I finished off with another little bit of Dark Reaper wash on some lower parts of his cloak to add shadow or some coloration changes. Or, yeah, basically more shadow. And so this is a bit of an artsy thing. It's a bit of back and forth. If you get it too bright, you can add another wash of Dark Reaper. If you mess up some stuff, you can just fix it with some washes and then re-highlight. And it's a bit of back and forth. And with Dawnstone, Administrative Gray, Corvus Black, we're going to paint his armor. Now this is where I would say the first real mistake I made for this model goes, but it's not really a mistake, it's more like a mistake in choosing the color palette, because his armor essentially looks a bit too similar to his gloves and cloak and stuff. So I probably should have just gone with just like a black, or as very dark as I could go, and that would have been better, or maybe like a bluish black. But so essentially what I did is I started off with Dawnstone all over, highlighted with Administrative Gray here and there, and then I did several washes of Corvus Black to get into the recesses and stuff. And then once that was done, I re-highlighted with Dawnstone again, focusing on all the sharp edges, folds, stuff like that, the more pronounced areas. And then went back to Administrative Gray on the more pronounced raised areas, the tips of his boot and stuff. but it didn't look too good, or the lines weren't as good, so I tried to redo it again with another wash of Corvus Black to blend things in a bit, and then re-highlight with Administrative Gray again. So this is a back and forth. This method kind of is faster than oil paints and stuff, and it allows a good amount of control, so that's kind of why I do it. But when I say faster, I mean it's also taking into account that you have a hair dryer to rapidly speed up the wash drying. And now with Rhinoxide, Doombull Brown, and Cadian Flesh Tone, interesting choice, I'm going to do the handles on his weapon. So basically Rhinoxide all over his handles on it. And then, so essentially this is like diamond handles. So what we're going to do is take Doombull Brown and we're just going to paint the center of each diamond. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And it looks fine. You can still see the recesses and you can see the corners of the diamond still being dark. Then we're going to take Cadian Flesh Tone and we're going to paint the top half of each diamond. And it works really, really well. I mean, I do a Cadian Flesh Tone and Doombull Brown mix, but he has like 50-50, and it turns out really well. The handle is pronounced and highlighted. Now, with XV88, Mournfang Brown, and Rhinoxide, we're going to paint the leather belt straps he has. So we're going to do a case of reverse highlighting. Now with XV88, I'm basically going to paint the entirety of the leather straps. Then I'm going to take Mournfang Brown and I'm going to paint the middle of the leather straps, because that is much easier than highlighting the edges of each strap. So basically I paint the whole thing XV88 and then I just do a single line of Mournfang Brown through, and it's basically done like that. Then I take Rhinoxide and I turned it into a wash, and I did make a mistake. I didn't dilute it enough, so it was a little bit too strong, and so when I applied it over, I applied it thickly. I should have done it thinner so that it wouldn't have been as overpowering. And then once that's done, I took XV88 and basically just did a few lines through, re-highlighted the top part of each belt, which was relatively simple, or the more raised areas and such, and that was the leather. Now with Mournfang Brown, Rhinoxide, and XV88, we're going to paint his pistol holster thing? Yeah. So a little bit different. So basically we're going to do Mournfang Brown all over as a base. Then we're going to take Rhinoxide, turn it into a wash, and apply it all over. We're going to apply around 2 coats of this, but that's because very thinned out wash, it's easier to add more coats than it is to remove. So once that's done, we're going to re-highlight all the edges of the thing with Mournfang Brown, but then we're going to paint like X's throughout, like diagonal slashes through, just to add some texture. Then we're going to mix a little bit with, well, we're going to take pure XV88, highlight the thing again, then we're going to add another wash of Rhinoxide to sort of blend it in, and then re-highlight, and this is just a back and forth. If it's too bright or too much, you can just tone it down with another wash of Rhinoxide. Now, one thing to note is that when you do a lot of washes, make sure you're using good filtered water, otherwise some things will be in it and will affect the final product. But yeah, this is just a back and forth. Just apply some Rhinoxide if it's too bright, and then highlight the very edges with XV88. Now I could have gone a little bit further. I could have probably mixed in some Pallid Witch Flesh into the XV88 to add a few dots here and there as some light points, but I was like, it's fine. But you can go further by adding more light colors into it. Now with AK Ultramat Varnish, we're going to add water to it, maybe like close to 1:1 or 1/3 parts water to one part this. Essentially because there's whitening in this, and if you add water, it gets rid of the whitening a bit. And so even though the colors are not done yet, I want to go straight to the metals because I want to do their skin last because I keep touching it all the time. And now with Rune Lord Brass, Agrax Earthshade, Gunmetal Gray, and Duraluminum, basically just a silver or like a metal color and a very bright silver. So we're going to cover his weapon, his backpack, and and his like belt buckles and buttons and stuff with Rune Lord Brass. I chose that for his belt buckle and his buttons and stuff because like it looked nice. And then I took Agrax Earthshade, watered down, and I applied it all over the brass of his weapons and backpack. And I do this actually like 3 times, 3 layers of this. And it looked pretty good. Then I re-highlighted with Rune Lord Brass along the edges, and I did a few streaks through the flat open planes here and there. And once that's done, I took some Gunmetal Gray and I mixed a little bit of it with the Rune Lord Brass, and then re-highlighted everything, or the majority of everything. All the previous highlights, I re-highlighted like half of them that were more towards upper raised areas, edges, and stuff like that. Then I re-highlighted further with pure Gunmetal Gray on more of the raised areas and stuff, and then finally with Duraluminum, just a dot or two here and there on the most raised areas, edges, and stuff like that. Yeah, simple. Alright, now onto the glass bottles, which I needed the metals around them to be done first. So basically, Cantor Blue, Calidor Sky, Pallid Witch Flesh, and Administrative Gray. So basically, I painted the whole of the glass fixtures Cantor Blue, a solid color. Then I took Calidor Sky, watered it down a bit, and so basically what I did was make a bunch of squiggly lines, dots here and there, and if it was too bright and colored, I would just touch it with my finger to remove some paint and splash it in. Essentially, I was trying to create like this sort of mess color, random dots and stuff. A bit hard to describe, but then took Calidor Sky, mixed in a little bit of Pallid Witch Flesh, and did this process again, but less, focusing more on the more raised areas of such. And when that happened, I also then made solid lines, like along the edges of the glass with the Calidor Sky, Pallid Witch Flesh. And then I went to Administrative Gray, and then I basically did that again, where I made a solid line of Administrative Gray on some... I basically artificially created an edge to this round glasses. Except for on his weapon, I didn't bother with that there. Now with Caliban Green, Elysian Green, Auric Flesh, and Nurgling Green, we're going to paint essentially the contents of what the glass bottles have. And I switched between the Acolyte and his weapon and stuff. So basically we take Caliban Green, water down a little bit, and we cover the part that has stuff in it in the bottles and such. And then once that's done, we basically take Elysian Green and we water it down a bit, and we just do like lines, squiggly lines, dots everywhere here and there. And then we repeat the process again with Auric Flesh, but much less, focusing on the more raised areas and more noticeable areas. And then with Nurgling Green, a few dots here and there, and then we do like a solid fine line where the green contents would meet the blue glass. Now I know on the cover photos and stuff, his vials are filled with different colored things. Like, I'm not doing that. It's all one kind of chemical he has. Alright, with Cadian Fleshstone, Pallid Witch Flesh, Emperor's Children, and Xerxes Purple, we're going to paint their skin. So a 1-to-1 mix of Cadian Fleshstone and Pallid Witch Flesh will be the base coat, and we cover his head and the head and hands, arms, feet of the whatever that creature is. I can't remember his name. And then once that was done, we then took a 1-to-1 mix of Emperor's Children and Xerxes Purple, turned it into wash, and applied it all over the flesh. We did about 2 of those. Then I went with pure Cadian... then I went to Xerxes Purple and created a wash with that and applied it on the lower parts of the guy's head and the creature's feet. Once that was done, we then went with pure Cadian Flesh Tone and then just highlighted with there. Now the reason why I'm using a Cadian Flesh Tone highlight instead of a highlight of Cadian Flesh Tone and Pallid Witch Flesh is because we started with a very bright color, because we're going to darken it heavily with a lot of washes to add to get in the crevices and just add the texture. So we start off with a layer of Cadian Flesh Tone highlights. We just follow the flat edges of their hands, ridges, and stuff. As far as the guy's forehead, solid lines along his forehead for that Gene Stealer stuff, and along the edges of his head and skull, and then a bunch of lines on the top of his head, like feathering it in. It's for a color transition. Then I started adding in Pallid Witch Flesh into the Cadian Flesh Tone, and I repeated this process a few times of building up the highlights and stuff. And if anything was messed up, I just went back with the Xerxes Purple mix and just applied a dash of it as a wash here and there to redarken things if I messed up. So a little bit of back and forth. The model was then fully assembled, and then from this point on I went on and just did a bunch of like small stuff, like little lights, his buttons and stuff like that, little panels, basically unimportant things that like take 2 colors that you can decide for yourself if you want. And now with Army Painter's Anti-Shine Matte Varnish, I don't know what they were smoking when they named this, because that is not what it does. It is actually a gloss, for some reason, but it's a somewhat muted gloss. So essentially how this works is I just take it, add a little bit of water to it to make it flow better, and to get rid of the whitening that for some reason all these varnishes seem to have. And I apply it, like 2 layers of it on each glass item, on his staff, on his waist, and what the creature's holding, and it comes out pretty well. And done. Yeah, pretty much. Sorry for missing the collection of paints. It's just like had some brain fog when I was putting the paints away. I was like, dang it, I forgot to take the pictures of it. I don't even remember what he used. So anyway, as far as the model goes, it didn't take me that much time to paint this, let's be honest. Okay, look, I've been very distracted of late, getting really lost trying to find ways to different lands that are hidden behind black ladders next to black stone. If you know, you know. Or maybe you don't know yet. Good luck with you. Yeah, so I've just been very busy of late. This should have taken me much less time, but as far as the model goes, so, positives. Okay, so the colors I chose didn't really work too well. So he should have had black gloves and more like black boots, which would have contrasted with his white robe and stuff. I thought I'd be able to make it with what colors I chose, but in the end it wasn't as dark, so mess up there. The brass looks actually really good, and the leather belts look pretty good. The handles on his weapon look great. The brass looks great, and I was originally going to give this a 7 out of 10, but I did so well with the glass bottles and stuff. I was like, dang, this is better than I even thought I could do. And it was just dots, dashes, and squiggly lines. And so I would say this is an 8 out of 10 for my work. Learned some new stuff, got somewhat better, and not bad for a character that I can't even remember what he does anymore. I haven't paid attention to any of the new codex stuff. Yeah, and yeah, overall, a very fun, simple model. I was able to actually bring out a lot more color, but like there is so much detail per square centimeter on these models, it is getting a little much. But yeah, so like the video if you like the video, share if you want to share it, and more to come when I can.